So in the last episode, we had demonstrated what I was going to do, curating the farms and the sort of local fabric of forestry and agriculture in the surrounding villages of Limoux, City 1 on my diagrams. And I've since worked this area up a little bit so that it's sort of filled in with various farms and agriculture and roads and lanes. So it's starting to sort of really come to life now. And if you recall previous episodes where we constructed the town, the city of Limoux itself, the container station and the steelworks in the previous episode. And what we're going to look at today is timetabling the local trains. Now previously we've set up 2 TGV lines which start and end their day at the TGV depot here, and they either depart Limoux and head down TGV line 1 to City 2 and City 3, or there is a longer route that departs Limoux and takes this TGV line that goes into the valley we call to the south of the river and stops at various places along the way. So those 2 TGV routes are already set up. We will have lots of regional trains that head off into the extent of this map as well. But today we're just going to focus on the local trains that we're going to set up in this particular valley. And it's going to be in the style of a sort of RER trains by the RATP in Paris. So that sort of level of small commuter train. And I've updated the diagram for this build, and basically Limoux, which is centre 1, we are going to have trains starting and ending their day at a depot here. Then the first stop will be Limoux, and they will run through Bayeux, take this line to Azebrook, follow around to Équadreville, through to Bergerac, up to Argentoul, cross over the main lines for a bridge to Arles, back through to Bayeux, and then back through to Limoux. And we'll have a separate line running in the opposite direction. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a line in the same way that we've done before and operate a train just to work out what the timings are. Now the critical thing about this route is that we don't want to disrupt too much. Well, actually we don't know what the regional trains are going to be doing yet because we haven't set them up. So we definitely need to get an understanding of the congestion that we might be causing around this junction. So the first thing we'll do is set a lineup. So we've set a local lineup that starts off in Limoux local TER/RER depot, goes to Limoux Central Station, uses any one of these 4 platforms to start, then goes to Bayeux, over to Hazebrouck, Quadreville, Bergerac, Argentoul, to Arles, back to Bayeux, back to Limoux, and then depending on where it is in the timetable, it might repeat the route or it might come back to the depot, because as you might be aware from the other videos, we're simulating trains starting and ending their day in a maintenance depot. So there will be a period of probably about 15 minutes or so where all trains are depoted, and we are imagining that it is overnight, even though there is no day-night cycle in the game. So the train that we're going to use for these local routes from the electric multiple units is the M109, and we're just going to run a single length of these, capacity of 588, 120 kilometers an hour maximum speed, 115 meters long, excellent traction. So we'll buy our test train and we'll set it to run local line E, which is our line, and we will unpause the game and we will make a note of the timings in the timetable time and then we will run and have a look at our timetable once we've done the full run and measured all of the timings. So it's the first time I've unpaused the game for a little while, so suddenly all the villages are going to start connecting traffic to the main town. TGVs are in their depot, as it is the start of the morning. So this is our depot station. So we'll be working out timings as they depart the stations. So we'll call this 6:10. So we'll call that 7:10, departing Limoux, City 1. So 8:50 departing Bayer. So say 11:10 departing here. So say 13:10 departing Quadriville. We actually made our first money. Actually, people on the train. So 15:15 departing Bergerac. So I've run the train, I've worked out the timings there and back around the loop, and what we have in terms of the timetable, just a reminder that we are running a fake 24-hour schedule wrapped into the 60-minute schedule that the timetable mod uses. So we don't want to run trains before 4 AM and we don't want to run trains after 11 PM, which equates to 10 minutes in transport fever time. and 57 minutes 30. So we have a rough 10-15 minute period where all the trains will be in the depot, and these depots will be full of trains as we start to develop more lines. So the timetable I've set up as a loop. We start off from the RER depot 2, we run through and come back eventually at the end of the day to this depot. So with the timings, we can basically start in a reasonable time in the morning. We can achieve basically 2 full loops before we've kind of run out of time. We could fit half a loop in, but to be honest, I don't want to put train depots sort of all over these nice little random villages. So we're going to get basically 2 full loops, and then the train is going to go back in the depot for the day to undergo its maintenance and its cleaning, etc., that it will do overnight out of hours. If we run the train in the opposite direction, and you see I'm skipping the intermediate stops here because I'm just really interested in the time that leaves the depot and the time that it leaves City 1 Limoux and switches back and does the opposite loop. Because when we create the timetables, we're just going to use these as the key timing points. So it's good to understand little intermediate timings, but really it's these bits which are the most important. So this doesn't really give us a lot of trains, a lot of services. We have 20-minute gap approximately. I'd like to reduce that to maximum 10 minutes, which seems to be the sort of good cycle time for passenger services in Transport Fever. So this is 2 trains. We introduce another 2 trains, and I've set these 2 up so that they arrive back at the latest possible time, which means that they will start approximately 10 minutes after the first 2 services. So this is good. So we have a good cycle here of these 4 trains, giving an approximate 10-minute cycle between stations. Not perfect, and because of the constraints that I've set myself for this 24-hour cycle, it's not really going to be that efficient or profitable, but that wasn't really the point. We can add in then another 2 trains just to fill in those gaps, and this sort of gives a priority around rush hour, even though no rush hour exists in Transport Fever, but let's pretend. So this gives us 6 trains, and luckily I developed 6 trains in our local train depot, so we don't even need to build any more depot tracks. So this is all worked out perfectly. So now that we've worked out the timetabling and the scheduling using the timetable mod within Transport Fever 2, selected the first line that we're going to set up, which is E1, and we are basically going to add arrival departure times just for the depot and just for Limoux C1. We're not going to add timing points for the intermediate stations. We know that it roughly takes this amount of time to get from here to here, and because these are just linear routes, it's fine. It can just run through, and here it will correct itself if it's slightly ahead of time. So we know that from our schedule we need to leave the depot at 11:30 and then leave Limoux at what should be 12:30. You have to be very careful when you enter the numbers that they do actually make it over here, because the connection between entering the numbers doesn't always work. So just be very careful that you do have them set up right. So I've set the arrival time for the depot particularly just 30 seconds before the departure, even though it will be arriving at the depot at around the 47 minutes 30 mark. If I was to put 47 minutes 30 into the arrival, if it missed that time, it would actually skip and go straight to Limoux C1. It would be before the arrival time of Limoux, so it would sit there basically all night. So we don't want to set a very strict arrival time. We can set it 30 seconds before, which means that the train will just sit there in the depot overnight, which is the behavior that we're looking for. So now I've set line E1, I need to repeat the process for the other 5 lines. So I've done a little test. I've just run them along their lines. It was a little bit chaotic as they came out of the train depot. They didn't quite know where they were on their schedules. So I've just done one of the cycles, and by 57 minutes 30, all 6 trains should be back in the depot. And then hopefully the next day cycle will run a little smoother. So we've got 2 trains in Limoux in City 1. 4 of the earlier trains have come back into the depot. And I love how they're slightly awkwardly positioned on the platforms. It's a nice touch. They don't all come up and line up perfectly. So it's quite realistic. We've got 56:30 on the time. Train number 5 is coming in. Incidentally, our TGVs are in the depot, with 1 in the station. There's just 1 more train, which I believe train E4. Yeah, E4 is the last train on the schedule to actually arrive back in the depot. So all of the citizens in my Transport Fever towns wondering what on earth is going on, because there is no day, there is no night, there is no 24-hour clock. I'm wondering why, what's going on? Why do all the trains go to sleep for 10 minutes? But here we are, it's entertaining me. 57:30. Is it going to be on its way? This is very tense. Are we coming home? Or are we going to stay there for the night? Maybe we're staying there for the night. Ready for the next morning. Not quite sure. Not sure what the decision making was. So it's probably a timetable issue. So if that's train E4, that's right. The time wasn't entered correctly. So that should have been 56. So because that time wasn't entered correctly, it's just hanging around at this station. That's probably what the issue was. And here we go. It's heading back to the depot now. Is it the same for TGV line B, T5? Yeah, all the times are out. You can kind of see what happens when you don't enter these numbers properly, and it's very easy not to get the numbers entered properly. You do have to check this. I was a bit slap hazard putting these numbers in clearly. Let's make those 13. Quite sure what I was doing there. Yes, so all 6 trains are in the depot. TGV is in its depot. So that's how you correct the timetable issues. So we are ready to begin the next day. And the cycle will run. And we're going to have a look at some other things on the villages that we need to get going before we go on to the next stage. Now you may have noticed while I was spinning around following the train how much City 1 Limoux has retracted in the times that I've had the game not in pause. The industrial area has basically retreated to a tiny area, and these residential and commercial areas have retreated. It's basically because Limoux's not been supplied with the goods and products to enable the city to sustain itself at this size. So it's partly why I'm keeping it paused, is that we need to get the industry and everything working before we can really keep the game running for too much longer. So it's just the fact of life. It's just how the system works. If you don't have the goods coming in, these requirements, the commercial and industrial areas, then you can only support a certain number of residents. So this is why it's looking a little thin on the ground at the moment. But part of the reason for doing this is that so that we can have a really good set of industrial chains working, so that these places can be supplied. So that's going to obviously come later in the game. So we set our farms up, and the next thing we want to do is actually set up some industry chains so that these become actual functioning farm areas. So we're going to use the Freestyle Industries mod, which basically allows us to create anything we'd like in industry terms. So out of the Freestyle Industry, just going to use the first one, which is a basic supply only. So we're just going to have a very, very small amount because we're going to have quite a lot. So output, I mean quite a lot of farms. So an output mode only. We're going to have a smaller number of employees because these industries can actually function as places that people need to go to work. And the cargo that we're going to have from this particular farm, we're going to have, depending on how many mods, bits and pieces of different cargoes that I have. We're going to say from here, we're going to say grain. So you just need to place this very small object down so that it's near to a road. It's quite difficult to see with all the textures, but if we position it about there, and if I turn on, you'll now see that we have the grain industry producing 10 grain. The reason why I've kept that so small is we're going to have a lot of them, and we're going to have different sorts of products arriving. So if we can position this, we'll have a livestock from this one. From this farm, we'll have another grain. And you can see when you click on it, click on the cook station, you can see that it's picked up. So this is basically what we're going to run through. We're going to pick up as many of the farms as we can. I'm going to keep switching between grain and livestock just so we've got that variety. All with these small amounts, and we'll see how that works out, whether that's actually balanced or not. Whether we need to have more, we can have more. If we just possibly cannot pick any of it up, we've got a few stray trees here, so let's just tidy these up. So I've lost track of exactly how many farms I put down. It's clearly a wheat farm, but let's not dwell on that. Some more grain. What else do we have? I'll keep it to grain and livestock. So let's pick up some of the farms over here. You can see I had quite a fun time making all of these individual farms and fields and buildings. So I think that's everything picked up. So what we're going to do is all of these crops and bits of livestock are going to be shipped by truck to our container station, and way up the map we're going to have a wholesale food market and food processing that is then going to bring everything back as food. So I'm basically going to create some very simple truck lines that go from each truck station that I've set up to the container station. And I will name these later, because I'm not some kind of animal, because I'll lose track of these very quickly otherwise. Make sure that you click the right station, truck station to truck station. So that's 15 lines set up, and all of the food will be brought to the container station via trucks. So I need to buy 15 vehicles that are going to be suitable for livestock or grain. These would be suitable for grain. Maybe we just use a general tarpaulin truck. Unless we want to go to particular ones just for the grain. Yeah, let's use particular ones for the grain. That'd be quite good to see. Got a few different truck mods. The tipper could be good for grain. It's a bit too American for this map. Yeah, so let's use the tipper truck. Just need to work out how many grains we've got. I'll buy 5 to start with. So this is where naming lines would be really useful, because you'd be able to see. Gosh. Use the isolate tool just to focus on the 14 is grain. And 2 is grain. Let's make a note of these. Okay, so we've counted them up. So, to set our grains going first, 14 is grain. Line 2 is grain. Line 5 is grain. Line 7. Line 9. And we need a couple more of these tippers. Now set line 11. $15. 13. And 14. And we'll use a general tarpaulin truck for livestock. So 1, 3, and 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 'And that was it. Yep, everything else accounted for. So these trucks and tippers basically go into, as you can see here, one has arrived. They'll go to the farms, and once production started, they will pick up and send it to the container station. No production is going to happen until we build the industry the other end that's going to require the crops and the livestock. So that's going to happen in the next episode. What we do need to do is, once the food arrives back here, we need to distribute the food to the various places, the various villages, because we're going to set food to be a requirement of growth for particularly Limoux, because we want to grow it back to its full size, but also we want to provide the other villages with food as well. So we're going to make sure that we have places that we can unload cargo. So these are not places that can pick up, it's just to drop off. You can see when you drop the stops, you get a white highlight of the areas that this picks up. So you want to try and pick up everywhere without duplicating too much. So that might be enough for Limoux, but we need to pick up all of the other villages as well, because we need to provide food. And most of these villages would be able to have one dropping off point. This is irrespective of whether they are on the commuter line or not. So let's just make sure we've got everything turned on so we can just double check. Yeah, see, the reason you turn it on is because I've already set up drop-off points in his villages. So there's really no need to start doing that again. I've already thought about it. So always turn your icons on so you can check if you've got it or not. So what we then need to do is basically set truck lines that distribute from the container station to all of the towns. So I'll set those up and we'll see how many we end up with. So we have 15 trucks that are going to deliver food and what other goods that come out of here back to the town and all the villages in this valley. So we're going to buy and let's just sell those. We're going to buy basic tarpaulin truck that serves all cargo, because all sorts of things might be coming out of the container station. We don't want to limit ourselves too much. So I'm going to buy 15 of those. And then we will assign them to our lines. It's 15 onwards. So this starts the local distribution network going, which the trains are going to have to serve the bit in the middle. So we have lots of happy little HGVs all distributing and picking up all over the town. Nothing to deliver or pick up yet until we complete the chain, obviously. So that's all set up, and that will start this end of things running nicely. What we need to do is, because of the mods I'm running, we need to actually make sure that food is something that we need as a demand for all our towns. So I'm going to make sure we've definitely got that turned on for all of our towns and all of our villages. Otherwise, food won't be a demand, and the industry chains won't start working. I think in the vanilla game, these are set automatically. You can't actually change what you have as a demand, just whether you can turn it on or off with the particular mod settings that I've got. So with all of our towns and villages in this area at least set up to demand food, and we have trucks set up to pick up grain and to pick up livestock and to send them to the cargo terminal, and we have trucks set up the other direction to distribute to the villages, we are all set to begin a cargo train run that is going to connect the garden of our map here with all its agriculture to the area of the map that is going to process it into food. And I'm going to use the area around City 2. And what I'm going to attempt to do in the next episode is whether I can thread some high-speed cargo lines in with the TGV network. And we have some gaps in the timetable, and we're going to see whether we can actually send some cargo trains from a cargo terminal and send them on a route that connects to the TGV line, and whether we can feed those in the gaps between the TGV trains to a food processing area, which I'm going to set up around City 2. So let's see if we can manage that.